world has celebrated Michael Jordan as the greatest basketball player who ever lived. 6 championships, 5 MVP awards, a legendary competitiveness that seemed almost superhuman. But what made him so driven? What turned a skinny kid from North Carolina into the most mentally tough athlete in sports history? Everyone had theories: natural talent, great coaching, an unbreakable will to win. They were all wrong. The real story has been hidden for 50 years, locked away in the memory of a family secret so dark that even Michael's closest friends never knew the truth. Until now. For the first time ever, Michael, Jordan's sister Roslyn, is ready to reveal what really happened in their childhood home. The trauma that nearly destroyed her brother. The pain that fueled his greatness. The secret that explains everything about the man who became a legend. This is the story that no one was supposed to tell. The truth that was buried beneath championship rings and million-dollar endorsements. The truth about Uncle Raymond. Everyone thinks they know my brother's story, Roslyn Jordan Smith says, her hands trembling as she holds an old photograph. But they don't know the real truth. They don't know about the nights he cried himself to sleep. They don't know about the secret that almost destroyed our family. The photo shows 12-year-old Michael standing next to a man whose face has been scratched out with a black pen. A man who was supposed to protect him. A man who nearly broke him instead. This is the never-before-heard story of how Michael Jordan's greatest strength was born from his deepest pain. How a scared little boy learned to transform suffering into power. How the most famous athlete in the world was forged in the darkest moments of his childhood. It's a story about survival, about healing, about finding the courage to turn your worst nightmare into your greatest triumph. It's the real story behind the legend. The rain hit Roslyn Jordan Smith's window like tiny pebbles. She sat in her favorite chair, a blue one that used to be her mother's. The house was quiet. Too quiet. At 61, Roslyn had seen a lot of life. She worked as a nurse for 35 years. She helped sick people feel better. She held hands with scared children in the hospital. She knew how to keep secrets. But tonight was different. The phone rang. It made her jump. Who calls? At 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night? Hello? She said. Hi, Mrs. Jordan Smith. This is Jake Martinez from ESPN. I'm sorry to bother you so late. Roslyn's heart started beating faster. Reporters had called before. They always wanted to talk about her famous brother. They wanted stories about when Michael was little. They wanted to know what made him so great at basketball. What do you want? She asked. We're making a new documentary about Michael Jordan, about his early life, before he was famous. We heard you might have some stories we haven't heard before. Roslyn looked across her living room. On the small table by the window sat an old photo. It showed young Michael when he was maybe 12 years old. He was standing next to a tall man who wasn't their father. The man's face was scratched out with a black pen. She had done that herself, many years ago. Everyone thinks they know my brother's story, Roslyn said slowly. Her voice was shaking a little. But they don't know the real truth. What do you mean? Jake asked. Roslyn stood up and walked to the window. The rain was coming down harder now. She could see her neighbor's porch light through the drops on the glass. They don't know about the nights he cried himself to sleep, she said. They don't know about the secret that almost destroyed our family. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Would you be willing to tell us about it? Roslyn picked up the old photo. She looked at young Michael's face. Even then, even at 12, his eyes looked older than they should have. Like he had seen Things a kid shouldn't see. There's something I've never told anyone, she said. Something that happened when Michael was just starting to love basketball. Something that made him who he became, but almost broke him first. What happened? Jake asked softly. Rosalind sat back down in her mother's blue chair. She closed her eyes and remembered. She remembered a time when Michael was small and scared. A time before he was strong. A time before he was famous. A time when he needed help, but didn't know how to ask for it. It was about a man, she said. A man who was supposed to take care of us. A man who was supposed to protect Michael. But he didn't. The phone was quiet. Even Jake seemed to know this was important. My brother became the greatest basketball player who ever lived, Rosalind continued. People think it was because he was born special. They think it was because he was naturally tough. But that's not the whole truth. She opened her eyes and looked at the photo again. The scratched-out face stared back at her. Michael became great because he had to survive something terrible first. He became tough because someone hurt him when he was just a little boy. Someone who was supposed to love him. Who? Jake asked. Rosalind felt tears in her eyes. She had kept this secret for almost 50 years. 50 years of watching her brother become famous. 50 years of people calling him the greatest. 50 years of knowing the real reason why. Our uncle, she whispered. Uncle Raymond. She put the photo down and picked up her phone. Her fingers shook as she found Michael's number. Mrs. Jordan Smith? Jake said. Are you still there? I have to make another call, Rosalind said. I have to call my brother. It's time people knew the truth about Uncle Raymond. She hung up on Jake. Then she stared at Michael's number on her phone. What would she say? How do you tell your brother that you're ready to share the secret that shaped his entire life? The rain kept falling. The house was quiet again, but everything had changed. For 50 years, Rosalind had watched her brother carry a weight that no child should ever have to carry. She watched him turn pain into power. She watched him become a legend. But legends are just people, and people deserve to have their stories told. All of their stories, even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. Rosalind pressed Michael's number. The phone started ringing. Michael? She said when he answered. It's me. We need to talk. Rosalind, what's wrong? Michael's voice sounded worried through the phone. Even at 61, he could still hear when his sister was upset. I just got a call from ESPN, Rosalind said. She was still holding the old photo. They want to do a documentary about your early life. Michael was quiet for a moment. And? Michael, I think it's time we told the truth. About Uncle Raymond. About what really happened when we were kids. The phone went silent. Rosalind could hear Michael breathing, but he didn't say anything for a long time. We promised we'd never talk about that, he finally said. His voice was different now. Harder. I know. But people should understand. They should know why you became who you are. Ross, I can't. Not now. Not ever. Rosalind felt her heart break a little. Her brother was still protecting that scared little boy inside him. Okay, she said softly. I understand. But if you ever change your mind... I won't, Michael said. Then his voice got softer too. But thank you for asking first. After they hung up, Rosalind sat back in her chair. She looked at the photo again and remembered when it all started. When their family was different. When Michael was different. It was 1975. She was 12 years old, and Michael was only 9. They lived in Brooklyn, New York, then. Their apartment was small and crowded, but it was home. Their father, James Jordan Sr., worked hard every day. Their mother, Dolores, did too. They had 5 children to feed. Larry, Dolores, they called her Sis, Roslyn, Michael, and baby James Jr. Life in Brooklyn was tough. The neighborhood wasn't safe. Kids had to be careful walking to school. James and Dolores worried about their children all the time. "We need to get out of here," Roslyn remembered her father saying one night. "These kids need a better place to grow up." That's when James got the phone call that changed everything. A man from General Electric called. They had a job for him in North Carolina. Good pay, safe neighborhood, a chance for a better life. "We're moving to Wilmington," James told the family one Sunday morning. "Pack your things. We leave next month." Michael was excited. He was tired of being scared all the time. He was tired of the older kids picking on him because he was small. He was tired of the sirens and the shouting outside their window at night. "Will there be basketball courts in North Carolina?" he asked his father. James smiled. "Plenty of them, son." The drive from Brooklyn to Wilmington took 8 hours. All 5 kids were packed into the back of their old station wagon. Michael sat by the window and watched the city disappear behind them. When they finally reached Wilmington, everything looked different. The trees were bigger. The air smelled cleaner. The houses had yards with grass. Their new home was on Gordon Road. It was a small brick house, but it had 3 bedrooms. For the first time, the boys didn't have to share a room with the girls. "This is going to be our fresh start," Dolores told them as they carried boxes inside. James started work at General Electric right away. The job was good, but the hours were long. Dolores found work at a bank downtown. She liked helping people with their money, but she had to work late sometimes too. Michael started 4th grade at a new school. The other kids talked differently than kids in Brooklyn. They said "y'all" instead of "you guys." They walked slower. They seemed nicer. But Michael was still the small kid with big ears. He still got picked on. He still felt different. Larry, who was 2 years older, made friends quickly. He was good at sports and confident. The other kids liked him right away. Michael wasn't like Larry. He was shy. He was careful. He watched before he spoke. He listened before he acted. At home, things were good, but busy. James worked long days. Dolores often stayed late at the bank. The older kids helped take care of the younger ones. That's when Uncle Raymond started coming around. Raymond Jordan was James's younger brother. He was 28 years old, but he seemed younger somehow. He was tall and skinny with a big smile. He wore nice clothes and drove a red car that he was always washing. "Uncle Ray doesn't have a family of his own," James explained to the kids. "So we're his family too." Raymond worked construction when he could find jobs. Sometimes he had money, sometimes he didn't. But he always had time for the Jordan kids. He would show up on Saturday mornings with donuts from the bakery. He would take them to the park. He would tell them funny stories about when their father was little. The kids loved Uncle Raymond. He was like the fun parent they never had. James and Dolores were always working or worrying about money. But Uncle Ray just wanted to play. "Who wants to go get ice cream?" he would say. All 5 kids would jump up and down. Michael especially loved Uncle Raymond. For the first time in his life, someone was paying special attention to him. Not to Larry, who was good at everything. Not to the girls, who were older and smarter. To him. "You're going to be something special, Mickey," Uncle Raymond would say. That's what he called Michael, Mickey. "I can tell. You've got something the others don't have." Michael didn't know what that something was, but he liked hearing it. He liked feeling special. By winter of 1975, Uncle Raymond was coming over 3 or 4 times a week. James and Dolores were grateful for the help. They trusted Raymond completely. He was family. It's good for the kids to have a man around when— "I'm working," James said. Dolores agreed. "Raymond is so good with them, especially with Michael." But there was something wrong with Uncle Raymond's attention. Something that would change Michael's life forever. Something that 9-year-old Michael didn't understand yet. Something that was about to begin. Christmas morning, 1976. Snow covered the ground outside the Jordan house on Gordon Road. Inside, wrapping paper was everywhere. The 5 Jordan children sat around the small Christmas tree, excited about their presents. Money was still tight for the family. James worked hard at General Electric, but Christmas presents were simple. A new pair of socks, a book, a small toy from the drugstore. Michael had opened his gifts. He got a puzzle and a new shirt. He was happy, but he could see that Larry got better presents. Larry always did. That's when Uncle Raymond knocked on the front door. "Ho, ho, ho," Raymond called out as he came inside. He was carrying 2 big boxes, wrapped in bright red paper. "Uncle Ray!" all the kids shouted. Raymond smiled his big smile. He was wearing a new winter coat and shiny black shoes. His hair was slicked back with grease. "I've got some special presents for my favorite kids," he said. James and Dolores looked at each other. They felt bad that they couldn't afford gifts like Raymond's. But they were grateful too. Raymond was helping their children have a better Christmas. Raymond gave the first box to Larry. Inside was a new baseball glove, real leather, the kind the high school players used. "This is for my future baseball star," Raymond said, ruffling Larry's hair. Larry's eyes went wide. "Thanks, Uncle Ray. This is the best present ever." Then Raymond turned to Michael. He was holding the second box. "And this," Raymond said, kneeling down so he was eye level with Michael, "is for someone very special. Someone who's going to be great someday." Michael's hands shook as he unwrapped the box. Inside was a real leather basketball, orange and perfectly round. Underneath the ball was a pair of Converse sneakers, white with red stripes. Michael had never owned anything so nice. The other kids gathered around to look. "Those are real basketball shoes," Larry said, and for the first time he sounded jealous of his little brother. Michael looked up at Uncle Raymond. "For me?" "Just for you, Mickey," Raymond said. His voice was soft and warm. "Because you're special. Because you're going to do great things." James and Dolores smiled. They were proud to see Michael so happy. He hardly ever got to be the special one. After Christmas dinner, Raymond took Michael outside to the backyard. "Let's see what you can do with that ball," Raymond said. The yard was small, but Raymond had brought something else in his car. A portable basketball hoop, the kind you could move around. "I got this for you too," Raymond said as he set it up. "Now you can practice any time you want." Michael bounced the ball. A few times, it felt perfect in his hands. He tried to shoot, but the ball bounced off the rim. "Don't worry," Raymond said. "I'm going to teach you. We're going to practice together, just you and me." For the next hour, Raymond showed Michael how to hold the ball, how to bend his knees, how to follow through with his wrist. Michael made his first basket just as the sun was going down. "Yes!" Michael shouted, jumping up and down. Raymond picked up Michael and spun him around. "I told you that you were special." Over the next few weeks, Raymond came by almost every day. He would take Michael to the backyard and teach him more about basketball. Michael got better quickly. He made more shots. He dribbled better. He started to feel confident for the first time in his life. But Raymond's teaching came with rules. Strange rules that Michael didn't understand. "This is our special time together," Raymond told Michael one cold January afternoon. They had been practicing for an hour, and Michael was sweating even though it was freezing outside. "What do you mean?" Michael asked. "This basketball training is just between us," Raymond said. "Don't tell your parents about how much we practice. They might get jealous. They might think I'm spending too much time with you. They might make me stop coming over." Michael's stomach felt funny when Raymond said that, but he didn't want the basketball lessons to stop. For the first time in his life, he was good at something. He was special. "Okay," Michael said. "I won't tell," Raymond smiled. "Good boy. This is going to be our secret." Champions always have secrets. They do things other people don't understand. Over the winter and spring of 1977, Michael's basketball skills improved fast. Really fast. The other kids at school started to notice. His brothers and sisters were impressed. Even James and Dolores were proud. "Where did Michael learn to play like that?" Dolores asked James one evening. They were watching Michael practice in the backyard by himself. "Must be all that time with Raymond," James said. "That boy's got a gift." But they didn't know about the secret practices. They didn't know that Raymond was pushing Michael harder and harder, making him practice until his hands were raw, making him run drills until he could barely breathe. "Champions don't quit," Raymond would say when Michael wanted to stop. "Champions do whatever it takes to be the best." Michael believed him. He wanted to be a champion. He wanted to be special. The basketball became Michael's whole world. When he wasn't practicing with Raymond, he was practicing alone. When he wasn't practicing, he was thinking about basketball. When he went to bed at night, he dreamed about making shots. But the practices with Raymond were getting longer and stranger. "We need more time together," Raymond told Michael in late spring. "Champions need extra training. Training that other people wouldn't understand." "What kind of training?" Michael asked. Raymond's smile looked different now. "Special training. Training that happens when everyone else is asleep. Training that's just between you and me." Michael felt that funny feeling in his stomach again. But he trusted Uncle Raymond. Raymond was the only person who thought he was special. "Okay," Michael said. That night, after everyone else was asleep, Raymond came to Michael's room for their first special training session. Michael had no idea that this was the beginning of something that would hurt him, something that would scare him, something that would change who he was forever. But it was also the beginning of something else, something that would make him fight harder than any other kid, something that would make him never want to feel weak again, something that would make him into Michael Jordan. The first night Raymond came to Michael's room, Michael was already asleep. He woke up when he heard his bedroom door open slowly. "Mickey," Raymond whispered. "Time for our special practice." Michael rubbed his eyes. The house was dark and quiet. Everyone else was sleeping. "What kind of practice?" Michael asked. Raymond sat on the edge of Michael's bed. In the dim light from the hallway, his face looked different, not as friendly as usual. "Mental training," Raymond said. "The kind that makes champions. The kind that separates great players from regular players." Michael didn't understand, but he trusted Uncle Raymond. Raymond was the only adult who thought he was special. Over the next few months, these nighttime visits became regular. Raymond would come to Michael's room 2 or 3 times a week. He would talk to Michael about being strong, about not being weak like other kids. "This is just between us," Raymond would always say. "If you tell anyone, they won't understand. They'll think you're weird. They'll make fun of you." Michael didn't like the way these sessions made him feel. Confused, scared, wrong somehow. But Raymond convinced him this was normal. All the great athletes had to learn to trust their coaches completely, Raymond told him. This is just part of becoming a champion. Michael Jordan is going to be a name that everyone knows someday. Michael wanted that to be true. He wanted to be famous. He wanted people to respect him instead of picking on him. But the visits made him feel sick inside. He started having trouble sleeping. He would lie awake worrying about when Raymond might come back. During the day, Michael threw himself into basketball even harder. The outdoor court became his safe place. When he was shooting baskets, he could forget about everything else. He would practice for hours by himself. Shooting, dribbling, running. The ball became his best friend. The only thing that made sense. His family noticed that Michael was changing. He wasn't as talkative as before. He didn't joke around with his brothers and sisters as much. Michael's getting serious about basketball, James told Dolores one evening. That's good. He needs something to focus on. But Rosalind noticed other changes. Michael was having bad dreams. She could hear him in his room at night, sometimes crying softly. Are you okay? She asked him one morning at breakfast. Michael looked at her with tired eyes. I'm fine, he said. But his voice sounded different, older somehow. At school, Michael started getting into fights. Little things would make him angry. If someone bumped into him in the hallway, he would push back hard. If someone made fun of his clothes, he would want to fight. Michael's becoming aggressive, his teacher told Dolores during a parent conference. He seems angry about something. Dolores was worried. Is he being bullied? I don't think so, the teacher said. It's more like he's angry at the world. What the teacher didn't know was that Michael was learning to protect himself the only way he knew how. If he was tough enough, strong enough, mean enough, maybe no one could hurt him anymore. The basketball court was where Michael felt most powerful. Every shot he made was proof that he was in control. Every game he won showed that he wasn't weak. The summer of 1977, Michael had grown 2 inches taller. He was still skinny, but he was getting stronger. His basketball skills were amazing for a 10-year-old. That boy's got something special, people in the neighborhood would say. But Michael's relationship with Raymond was getting worse. The nighttime visits were happening more often. Raymond was getting more demanding, more controlling. You belong to me, Raymond would tell Michael. I'm the one who made you good at basketball. Without me, you're nothing. Michael started to believe it. He thought Raymond owned him. He thought he had to do whatever Raymond said, or he would lose his basketball skills. If you ever tell anyone about our special training, Raymond warned, I'll tell everyone that you wanted it. I'll tell them you asked for it. No one will believe you. Michael was trapped. He was scared of Raymond, but he was also scared of losing basketball. The game was the only thing that made him feel strong. One day in late summer, Michael was practicing alone at the outdoor court near his house. An older boy named Tommy walked over. You're pretty good for a little kid, Tommy said. I'm not little, Michael replied, bouncing the ball hard. You want to play one-on-one? Tommy asked. Tommy was 13 and much bigger than Michael. But Michael said yes anyway. He had to prove he wasn't weak. The game was rough. Tommy pushed Michael around, using his size advantage. But Michael didn't give up. He played harder. He got more aggressive. When Tommy knocked him down, Michael got up and played even tougher. Finally, Michael scored the winning basket. Tommy was angry, and embarrassed. "You got lucky," Tommy said. "No," Michael said, looking Tommy straight in the eye. "I'm just better than you." That was the first time Michael felt truly powerful. Not because Raymond told him he was special, but because he proved it himself. Walking home that day, Michael made a decision. He wasn't going to let anyone make him feel weak anymore. Not Tommy. Not the kids at school. Not even Raymond. The nighttime. Visits were still happening. Michael still felt scared and confused. But something inside him was changing. Something was getting stronger. He started working out in his room at night. Push-ups. Sit-ups. Anything to get stronger. Anything to feel more in control. "I'm going to be the best basketball player in the world," he would whisper to himself, "and no one is ever going to hurt me again." Michael didn't know it yet, but he was building something that would carry him through his entire life. An iron will, a refusal to quit, a need to win that was stronger than his fear. The pain Raymond was causing him was terrible, but it was also creating something else, something that would make Michael Jordan different from every other player who ever lived, the ability to turn suffering into strength, to transform pain into power, to use his worst moments to fuel his greatest victories. But first, he had to survive. And surviving was going to be the hardest thing he'd ever done. February 15th, 1978. Michael was 11 years old now. He had grown 3 more inches, and his basketball skills were getting scary good. But the nighttime visits from Raymond were getting worse, too. Michael couldn't sleep most nights. He would lie in bed, listening for footsteps in the hallway. When he heard Raymond's car pull up outside, his stomach would twist into knots. At school, Michael's grades were getting better, but his temper was getting worse. He got into a fight with a 7th grader who called him String Bean. Michael was smaller, but he fought like he was fighting for his life. "Michael Jordan," the principal said after the fight, "what's gotten into you?" Michael couldn't answer. How could he explain that he felt angry all the time? That he felt like he had to prove he wasn't weak? That fighting was the only way he knew how to feel strong? At home, things were getting tense. James was working extra hours at General Electric. Dolores was staying late at the bank more often. Money was still tight, and both parents were stressed. "The kids are growing up so fast," Dolores said to James one evening. "Michael especially. Sometimes I don't even recognize him." "He's just becoming a young man," James replied. "Boys go through changes at this age." But Rosalind knew something was really wrong with her brother. She could see it in his eyes. They looked old and sad, like he was carrying something too heavy for a kid his age. One Tuesday night, Michael decided he couldn't take it anymore. The secret visits, the confusion, the feeling of being trapped. He was going to tell his parents everything. Michael got out of bed and walked to his bedroom door. He could hear the TV on downstairs. His parents were still awake. He took a deep breath and walked down the stairs. But when he got to the living room, he froze. Raymond was there. He was sitting on the couch next to James, drinking a beer and laughing about something. They looked happy. Like old times. "Michael," James called out when he saw his son. "Come say hi to Uncle Raymond." Michael's mouth went dry. How could he tell his father that the man sitting next to him, his own brother, was hurting him? What if they didn't believe him? What if it broke the family apart? "Hi, Uncle Ray," Michael said quietly. Raymond looked at him with that smile that used to seem friendly, but now made Michael feel sick. "There's my favorite basketball player," Raymond said. "You getting ready for bed, Mickey?" Michael nodded. He turned around and went back upstairs without saying another word. In his room, Michael sat on his bed and cried. Not the loud crying of a little kid, but the quiet, desperate crying of someone who feels completely alone. That's when he made a different decision, a decision that would change everything. He wasn't going to tell his parents. He wasn't going to ask for help. He was going to save himself. Michael wiped his eyes and got down on the floor. He started doing push-ups. 1, 2, 3. He kept going until his arms hurt. Then he did sit-ups. Then jumping jacks. Then he got his basketball and started dribbling, as quietly as he could in his room. "I'm never going to be weak again," he whispered to himself. "I'm going to be so strong that no one can hurt me. I'm going to be so good at basketball that everyone will respect me." From that night on, Michael's training became obsessive. When Raymond would come for the secret visits, Michael would focus his mind on basketball. He would think about making shots, about winning games, about being the best. Someday, he would tell himself during the worst moments, "I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be so successful that none of this will matter." Michael started sneaking out of the house at night after Raymond left. He would go to the outdoor court at DC Virgo Middle School and practice by streetlight. He would shoot baskets in the dark, working on his form over and over. The neighbors started talking about the Jordan boy who practiced basketball at all hours. "That kid's going to be something special," old Mr. Patterson told his wife. "Never seen dedication like that." But they didn't know what was driving that dedication. They didn't know about the pain that was being transformed into power. At school, Michael's basketball skills were becoming legendary. During recess, kids would gather to watch him play. Even the older students were impressed. "How did you get so good?" a sixth grader asked him one day. "Practice," Michael said simply. Lots and lots of practice. What he didn't say was that basketball had become his escape. Every shot he made was proof that he was in control of something. Every game he won showed that he wasn't helpless. Michael's grades improved too. He became determined to excel at everything. If he was the best student and the best athlete, maybe people would see his strength instead of whatever Raymond was trying to make him feel. His teacher, Mrs. Williams, noticed the change. "Michael's become one of my hardest-working students," she told Dolores during another parent conference. "He seems very motivated." "We're proud of him," Dolores said. "He's really found his focus." But at home, Michael was becoming more distant from his family. He spent most of his time in his room or outside practicing. He didn't joke around with his siblings anymore. He was serious all the time. "What's wrong with Michael?" his little brother James Jr. asked Roslyn one day. "He doesn't want to play with me anymore." Roslyn didn't know what to say. She could see that Michael was hurting, but she didn't understand why. One night in March, Raymond made a mistake. He got careless. He came to Michael's room when Roslyn was still awake. She heard whispers coming from Michael's room and got up to investigate. She crept down the hallway and peeked through the crack in Michael's door. What she saw made her stomach turn. Raymond was sitting on Michael's bed, talking to him in a low voice. Michael looked scared and uncomfortable. Even though Roslyn was only 14, she knew something was very wrong. The next morning, Roslyn tried to talk to Michael. "Are you okay?" she asked him when they were walking to school. Michael looked at her with those old, tired eyes. "I'm fine," he said. "You can talk to me about anything," Roslyn said. "I'm your sister. I love you." For a moment, Michael's face softened. He looked like he wanted to say something. But then he shook his head. "There's nothing to talk about," he said. "I just want to focus on basketball." That afternoon, Michael had the best practice of his life. He made 17 shots in a row. He outplayed kids who were 3 years older than him. But that night, as he lay in bed waiting to see if Raymond would come, Michael made himself a promise. "This is going to end," he whispered. "I don't know how, but this is going to end. And when it does, I'm going to be so strong that nothing will ever hurt me again." Michael was learning something that would stay with him forever. Sometimes you can't wait for someone to save you. Sometimes you have to save yourself. And sometimes the thing that hurts you the most becomes the thing that makes you strongest. Spring 1978. Michael was 12 years old and finally growing into his body. He was still thin, but he was almost as tall as Raymond now. More importantly, something inside him had changed. The scared little boy was still there, but he was protected now by something harder, something that wouldn't break. Michael made the junior varsity basketball team at DC Virgo Middle School. He was the youngest player on the team, but he was also the best. The coach, Mr. Henderson, had never seen a kid work so hard. "Jordan's got something special," Henderson told the other teachers. "I've never seen a 12-year-old with that kind of focus." What Mr. Henderson didn't know was that basketball had become more than a game for Michael. It was proof that he could control something in his life. Every practice, every game, every shot was Michael showing himself that he was strong. At home, things were getting tense in a different way. Raymond was having money problems, his construction jobs weren't steady, and he was asking James for loans more often. "I just need to get back on my feet," Raymond would tell James. "Family helps family, right?" James always said yes. Raymond was his little brother, and James believed in helping people when they were down. But Raymond was getting more desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. One Saturday afternoon in May, James and Dolores both had to work. James was pulling overtime at General Electric, and Dolores had to go to the bank for a special meeting. Larry was at a friend's house. The younger kids were at their grandmother's. Only Michael and Roslyn were home. That's when Raymond showed up. Michael was in his room, reading a book about basketball fundamentals. He heard Raymond's car pull up outside, and his stomach immediately tightened. "Hey, kids!" Raymond called out as he came through the front door. "Where is everybody?" "Mom and Dad are working," Roslyn called back from the kitchen where she was making a sandwich. Michael stayed in his room, hoping Raymond would just visit with Roslyn and leave. But that's not what happened. "Where's my favorite basketball star?" Raymond said, walking down the hallway toward Michael's room. Michael could smell alcohol on Raymond's breath when he opened the door. Raymond had been drinking, which made everything worse. "I think it's time we had another one of our special practice sessions," Raymond said, sitting down on Michael's bed. But this wasn't the scared 10-year-old from 2 years ago. Michael had grown taller. He had gotten stronger from all his training. Most importantly, he had found something inside himself that wouldn't back down anymore. "No," Michael said simply. His voice was calm but firm. "I'm done with that." Raymond's face changed. The fake friendly smile disappeared. "What did you say?" "To me?" Raymond asked, standing up. "I said no," Michael repeated. "I don't want to do that anymore." "I'm not going to do that anymore." Raymond grabbed Michael's arm, trying to pull him closer. "You don't get to say no to me, boy. I made you. Without me, you're nothing." That's when something snapped inside Michael. All the anger he had been holding, all the nights of fear, all the confusion and shame, it all came out at once. Michael pulled his arm away from Raymond with a strength that surprised both of them. "Don't touch me," Michael said, his voice getting louder. The commotion brought Roslyn running down the hallway. "What's going on?" she demanded, standing in the doorway. Rosalind looked at Michael's face and saw something that scared her. Her little brother looked furious and desperate at the same time. Then she looked at Raymond, and suddenly everything made sense. The way he always wanted to be alone with Michael. The way Michael had changed over the past few years. The nightmares, the anger, the sadness. "Get away from my brother!" Rosalind screamed. Raymond turned toward her, annoyed that his plans were being interrupted. "This is none of your business, little girl," he said. That's when Michael made his move. All those hours of working out, all that basketball training, all that anger. He used it all. Michael pushed Raymond as hard as he could. Raymond, who wasn't expecting it, and wasn't steady on his feet because of the drinking, stumbled backward. He tripped over Michael's desk chair and fell down hard, hitting his head on the corner of the wooden desk. Raymond lay on the floor for a moment, stunned. Blood trickled from a small cut on his forehead. Michael stood over him, breathing hard. For the first time in years, he felt completely in control. "If you ever touch me again," Michael said, his voice cold and steady, "if you ever come near me or my family again, I will tell everyone what you did. Everyone will know what kind of person you really are." Raymond looked up at this 12-year-old boy and saw something that genuinely scared him. This wasn't the helpless child he had been manipulating. This was someone who had found his strength. Someone who wouldn't be a victim anymore. "You can't prove anything," Raymond said, struggling to get up. "Maybe not," Michael replied. "But I don't have to prove it. I just have to tell people. And once I start talking, other people might start talking too. People notice things, Uncle Raymond. People remember things." Rosalind was standing in the doorway, her eyes wide. She didn't understand everything that was happening, but she knew her brother was fighting for something important. Raymond got to his feet slowly. He looked at Michael, then at Rosalind, then back at Michael. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is," Michael replied. "It's over right now. And if you're smart, you'll never come back here." Raymond walked to the door, holding his head where he had hit it. At the doorway, he turned around one more time. "You think you're tough now?" he said to Michael. "You think you're some kind of hero?" Michael looked him straight in the eye. "I think I'm strong enough to protect myself, and I think you're weak enough to pick on children. That makes you pathetic." Those words hit Raymond harder than the push had. He left the house without saying another word. Michael and Rosalind stood in the bedroom, both breathing hard. "Michael," Rosalind said softly, "what was he doing to you?" Michael looked at his sister. For a moment, he thought about telling her everything, but he wasn't ready for that. Not yet. "He was trying to hurt me," Michael said. "But he can't anymore. I won't let him." That night, Michael didn't wait to see if Raymond would come back. Instead, he went to the outdoor court and practiced until midnight. Every shot he made felt like another step away from being a victim. Raymond never came back to the Jordan house. He avoided the family completely after that day. A few months later, they heard he had moved to a different state. But the damage was done. Michael carried the scars of what had happened, even though he had finally ended it. The difference was that now Michael knew he could fight back. He knew he could protect himself. He knew that no matter what happened to him, he could survive it and come out stronger. That knowledge would carry him through everything that came next. High school basketball, college, the NBA. Every challenge he would ever face. Because on that spring day in 1978, 12-year-old Michael Jordan learned the most important lesson of his life. Sometimes you have to save yourself. And when you do, You discover just how strong you really are. High school arrived like a new beginning. Michael was 14 years old when he walked through the doors of Emsley A. Laney High School in Wilmington. He was 6 feet tall now, still thin, but stronger than he looked. The Raymond nightmare was behind him, but it had left its mark. Michael carried himself differently now. He walked with confidence, but there was something hard in his eyes, something that said he wouldn't be pushed around by anyone. Basketball tryouts were in November 1979. Michael was excited but nervous. This was his chance to prove himself at a higher level. The varsity coach was a man named Clifton "Pop" Herring. He was tough and fair, but he believed in experience over potential. When he looked at skinny Michael Jordan, he didn't see a future. Star. "You're good, Jordan," Coach Herring told Michael after tryouts. "But you're not ready for varsity yet. I'm putting you on JV for this year. Work hard, grow some more, and maybe next year." Michael felt like he had been punched in the stomach. He had worked so hard. He was better than half the players who made varsity. But the coach only saw a skinny kid. That night, Michael cried for the first time since the confrontation with Raymond. But these weren't tears of fear or sadness. They were tears of anger and determination. "I'll show him," Michael said to himself. "I'll show everyone." The next day, Michael asked the JV coach, Fred Lynch, if he could practice with the team, even though the season hadn't started yet. "Son, we don't start official practice for another month," Coach Lynch said. "I know," Michael replied, "but I want to get better. I want to be ready." Lynch had never heard a freshman ask to practice extra. "All right, Jordan, if you want to work, I'll put you to work." From that day forward, Michael's training became legendary at Laney High School. He would be the first player in the gym every morning at 6 a.m. He would stay after school to shoot baskets until the janitor had to lock up. Michael practiced like his life depended on it. Coach Lynch remembered years later. "I've never seen anything like it." He would run drill after drill until his shoes were worn through. But Rosalind knew why Michael was so driven. She watched her brother transform his pain into power. Every shot he made was proof that he was in control. Every game he won showed that he was strong. He was different from other kids, Rosalind would remember. He couldn't just play for fun. Everything had to mean something. Every win proved he was strong. Every loss felt like he was weak again. Michael's competitiveness became extreme. He would bet on everything. Card games with his teammates, who could run faster, who could eat lunch faster. He couldn't stand losing, because losing reminded him of feeling helpless. During his sophomore year, Michael finally made the varsity team. He was still coming off the bench, but he was learning from the older players. More importantly, he was learning how to use his anger in a positive way. His parents noticed the change too. James and Dolores were proud of Michael's dedication, but sometimes they worried he was pushing himself too hard. "That boy is always practicing," Dolores said to James one evening. "Even when he's supposed to be relaxing, he's thinking about basketball." "At least he's staying out of trouble," James replied. "Better to work too hard than not hard enough." What they didn't understand was that basketball wasn't just a hobby for Michael. It was his way of proving to himself every day that he was safe, that he was strong, that no one could hurt him anymore. By his junior year, Michael was the star of the Laney team. He averaged 25 points per game and led the team to the state playoffs. College scouts started coming to watch him play, but success didn't heal the wounds Raymond had left. Michael still had trouble trusting people completely. He was friendly with his teammates, but he kept them at a distance. He dated girls, but he never let them get too close. Michael was popular, remembered his teammate Buzz Peterson, who would later be his roommate at UNC. But you always felt like there was a wall there, like he was protecting something. The wall was protecting the scared 12-year-old who still lived inside Michael's heart. The boy who had learned that adults could hurt you. The boy who had decided that the only person he could really trust was himself. During his senior year, the college letters started pouring in. Duke University wanted him. University of Maryland wanted him. But the letter that mattered most came from the University of North Carolina and Coach Dean Smith. Smith was known as one of the greatest coaches in college basketball. He was also known for being like a father to his players. But that's exactly what worried Michael. When Coach Smith came to visit the Jordan family, he sat in their living room and talked about taking care of Michael, about being there for him, about treating him like family. Michael listened politely, but inside he was thinking, I don't need another father figure. I can take care of myself. Still, UNC had the best basketball program, and Chapel Hill was far enough from Wilmington that Michael could start fresh. He could be someone new. I want to go to North Carolina, Michael told his parents. James and Dolores were thrilled. UNC was a great school with a great basketball program. It was also close enough that they could watch Michael play, but Michael had a different reason for choosing UNC. He wanted to prove that he could succeed at the highest level. He wanted to show everyone, including himself, that the scared little boy was gone forever. The night before he left for college, Michael sat in his room looking at his old basketball, the one Raymond had given him for Christmas so many years ago. He had kept it all this time, not because it reminded him of Raymond, but because it reminded him of the moment he fell in love with basketball. You saved me, he said to the ball. When everything else was falling apart, you were there. Basketball had been his escape when Raymond was hurting him. It had been his weapon when he fought back. It had been his proof that he was strong. Now it was going to be his ticket to greatness. Michael packed the ball in his suitcase. He was taking it to North Carolina with him, not as a reminder of the past, but as a symbol of his future. The next morning, as James loaded Michael's bags into the car for the drive to Chapel Hill, Rosalind pulled her brother aside. I'm proud of you, she said. You've come so far from that scared little boy. Michael looked at his sister. She didn't know the whole story, but she knew enough. She had been there during the worst times. She had seen him fight his way back to strength. I'm not that little boy anymore, Michael said. I'm never going to be weak again. As they drove away from Wilmington, Michael looked back at the house on Gordon Road one last time. So much had happened there. Pain and fear, but also growth and strength. He was leaving as Michael Jordan, future college basketball player. But he was also carrying with him the lessons he had learned in that house. The lesson that you have to save yourself. The lesson that strength comes from surviving your worst moments. The lesson that sometimes the thing that hurts you most becomes the thing that makes you strongest. At UNC, Michael would learn to channel that strength into greatness. But the foundation had already been built in Wilmington, North Carolina, by a 12-year-old boy who refused to stay broken. University of North Carolina, August 1981. Michael was 18 years old as he walked onto the campus in Chapel Hill. Everything was new and exciting. Red brick buildings covered with ivy. Students everywhere carrying books and talking about classes. Basketball hoops on outdoor courts where he could practice any time he wanted. For the first time in years, Michael felt like he could breathe freely. He was 200 miles from Wilmington, 200 miles from the house on Gordon Road, 200 miles from the memories that still haunted his dreams, His roommate was a friendly kid from Asheville named Buzz Peterson. Buzz was also a basketball player, a point guard who had been recruited by Coach Dean Smith. "You must be Michael Jordan," Buzz said when Michael walked into their dorm room. "I heard you're pretty good at basketball." "I'm all right," Michael said with a small smile. He was still careful about trusting new people, but Buzz seemed genuine. Coach Dean Smith was everything people said he was: calm, smart, and caring. He treated his players like they were his own sons. During their first team meeting, Smith looked directly at each player. "You're not just basketball players here," Smith told the team. "You're students first. You're young men learning how to become adults. My job is to help you with both basketball and life." Michael listened, but part of him stayed guarded. The last adult who promised to help him had been Uncle Raymond. Michael had learned to be careful about trusting older men, even good ones, like Coach Smith. Still, UNC felt like home in a way that surprised Michael. The campus was beautiful. The other players were talented and hard-working. The coaching staff pushed everyone to get better every day. Michael's freshman year started. Well, he was playing alongside upperclassmen like James Worthy and Sam Perkins, players who were already famous in college basketball. At first, he was just happy to be on the court with them. But Michael's competitive fire couldn't stay hidden for long. During practice scrimmages, he played like every possession mattered. He dove for loose balls. He challenged older players to work harder. He demanded perfection from himself and everyone around him. Michael practiced like it was the championship game every day. James Worthy remembered years later. Coach Smith tried to get close to all his players, but Michael always held something back. What Michael held back was the truth about why he was so driven. His teammates saw the incredible work ethic. They saw the fierce competitiveness. They saw a player who hated losing more than anything in the world. What they didn't see was the scared 12-year-old who still lived inside Michael's heart. The boy who had learned that being weak meant getting hurt. The boy who had decided that winning was the only way to stay safe. Michael made friends with his teammates, but he never let them get too close. When they went out to parties, Michael would go too, but he would always leave early. When they talked about girls or problems at home, Michael would listen, but rarely share anything personal. Michael was friendly, but you always felt like there was a wall there, Buzz Peterson later said, like he was protecting something important. The wall was protecting his secret. The truth about Uncle Raymond. The truth about why he couldn't sleep some nights. The truth about why losing a basketball game felt like the end of the world. Basketball wasn't just a game for Michael. It was proof every day that he was strong. Every shot he made showed that he was in control. Every win proved that he couldn't be beaten. During practice, Coach Smith noticed Michael's intensity was different from other players. Smith had coached hundreds of young men, and he could usually read them pretty well. But Michael was harder to figure out. "Son, you don't have to prove yourself every single day," Smith told Michael after a particularly intense practice. "You're already on the team. You're already good enough." But Michael couldn't explain that proving himself every day wasn't about basketball. It was about survival. It was about making sure he never felt helpless again. "I just want to be the best I can be, Coach," Michael said. Smith nodded, but he could see there was more to it. He had worked with tough kids before. Kids from poor families. Kids who had seen violence. Kids who used basketball to escape their problems. Michael seemed different, though. He came from a good family. His parents were hard-working, loving people. His grades were good. He didn't get into fights or cause trouble. But there was something in Michael's eyes that reminded Smith of players who had been through real trauma. A hardness that didn't match his age. A need to win that went beyond normal competitiveness. The season progressed, and Michael's role on the team grew bigger. By January, he was starting some games. By February, he was one of the team's most important players. Then came March Madness, the NCAA tournament. The biggest stage in college basketball, UNC, made it all the way to the championship game against Georgetown University. The Hoyas had a dominant center named Patrick Ewing and a tough defense that had been shutting down teams all season. The game was played in the New Orleans Superdome on March 29, 1982. Thousands of fans filled the arena. Millions more watched on television. Michael was nervous before the game, but it was a different kind of nervousness than he used to feel as a child. This wasn't fear of being hurt or helpless. This was excitement about competing at the highest level. The game was close and physical. Georgetown's defense was as good as advertised. With 32 seconds left, UNC was losing 62-61. Coach Smith called a timeout and drew up a play. The ball was supposed to go to James Worthy, the team's best player. But when the play broke down, the ball ended up in Michael's hands. He was standing 16 feet from the basket on the left side of the court. Patrick Ewing was guarding the paint. The clock was running down. Michael caught the ball, squared his shoulders, and shot without hesitation. The ball arced through the air as 61,000 people held their breath. It swished through the net with 15 seconds left on the clock. UNC 63, Georgetown 62. Georgetown missed their final shot, and UNC had won the national championship. Michael's teammates rushed onto the court, celebrating wildly. But Michael felt something different than pure joy. He felt a sense of completion, a feeling that he had proven something important to himself. As he cut down the nets and held up the championship trophy, Michael thought about the journey that had brought him here. The scared little boy in Wilmington seemed like a different person now. That night, Michael called home to share the victory with his family. "We're so proud of you," Dolores said through happy tears. "You did it, son," James added. "You're a champion." When Rosalind got on the phone, she was quiet for a moment. "How does it feel?" she asked. Michael knew she wasn't just asking about winning the championship. She was asking about everything, about how far he had come, about the strength he had found inside himself. "It feels like I'm finally free," Michael said. But as he hung up the phone, Michael realized that winning the championship hadn't healed all his wounds. The memories of Uncle Raymond were still there. The need to prove himself every day was still there. Success had given him confidence and recognition, but it hadn't fixed the broken parts inside him. Those would take longer to heal. Still, hitting that shot had shown Michael something important. When the pressure was highest, when everything was on the line, he could trust himself to come through. That knowledge would carry him through everything that came next. The NBA draft, professional basketball, the biggest stages in sports, because on that night in New Orleans, Michael Jordan proved to himself that the strength he had built in Wilmington was real, that the scared little boy was gone for good, that he was ready to become a legend. Michael Jordan declared for the NBA draft after his junior year at UNC. Everyone expected him to be picked early, but when draft night came, he wasn't chosen first, or even second. The Houston Rockets picked Hakeem Olajuwon first. The Portland Trail Blazers picked Sam Bowie second. The Chicago Bulls selected Michael third. Michael was disappointed about not being picked higher, but he tried not to show it. He had learned long ago to keep his emotions hidden. Still, being picked third felt like people were saying he wasn't good enough. "I'll show them," Michael told his agent, David Falk. "I'll show everyone who made a mistake." That drive to prove people wrong had been building inside Michael since he was 12 years old. Every slight, every doubt, every time someone said, "He wasn't ready," it all added fuel to a fire that had been burning for years. Chicago in 1984 was nothing like Chapel Hill. The city was big and cold. The Bulls were terrible, winning only 27 games the year before Michael arrived. The fans barely cared about basketball. Most people came to watch the games just to see if the Bulls would lose again. Michael rented an apartment in downtown Chicago and bought his first nice car. He was making more money than his family had ever dreamed of, but success felt lonely. During his rookie year, Michael was spectacular on the court. He averaged 28.2 points per game and won Rookie of the Year. The Bulls improved to 38 wins. Suddenly, people in Chicago cared about basketball again. But privately, Michael was struggling with something he hadn't expected. Being famous was harder than he thought it would be. Everywhere he went, people wanted something from him. Autographs, pictures, interviews. Everyone wanted to be his friend. But Michael had trouble figuring out who was genuine and who just wanted to use him. Michael was friendly with his teammates, but you always felt like there was a wall there. Remembered Orlando Woolridge, who played with Michael during his rookie year. Like he was protecting something. The wall was still there. Even though Michael was successful and famous, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had to be careful about who he trusted. The scared 12-year-old was still inside him, warning him to be cautious. Michael dated women, but he kept them at a distance too. He would take them to nice restaurants and buy them expensive gifts, but he never talked about his childhood or his family. He never shared the things that really mattered to him. You could be with Michael for months and still feel like you didn't really know him. One woman who dated him during his early NBA years later said, "He was charming and fun, but there was always something he was holding back." What Michael was holding back was the truth about Uncle Raymond, about the nights of fear and confusion, about the way those experiences had shaped everything he was. Basketball was still his safe place. On the court, Michael felt completely in control. Every game was a chance to prove his strength. Every win showed that he couldn't be defeated. But in 1985, during his second season, disaster struck. Michael broke his foot early in the year and had to miss most of the season. For the first time since high school, he couldn't play basketball. Without basketball to focus on, Michael's mind had too much time to wander. The memories he had been running from started catching up with him. He would lie in his apartment, his foot in a cast, and think about things he had tried to forget. One night in February, during a snowstorm in Chicago, Michael called Rosalind from his hotel room while the team was on the road. "I keep having the same dream," he told her. His voice sounded different than usual. Younger, more vulnerable. "What kind of dream?" Rosalind asked. "I'm back in that house on Gordon Road," Michael said quietly. "And I can't get out. The doors are locked, and I can't get out." This was the first time Michael had ever directly mentioned what happened with Raymond to anyone in his family. Rosalind felt her heart break for her brother. "Michael," she said softly, "have you thought about talking to someone? A counselor or a therapist?" "I can't," Michael said quickly. "If this gets out, it'll ruin everything. Everyone will see me differently. They'll think I'm weak." "You're not weak," Rosalind said. "You're the strongest person I know." "I don't feel strong," Michael admitted. "I feel like that scared little boy sometimes, and I hate feeling that way." Rosalind wanted to help, but she didn't know how. Michael had always handled things by himself. He had always been the one to find his own solutions. "You don't have to handle everything alone," she told him. "Yes, I do," Michael said. "That's the only way I know how to survive." When Michael's foot healed and he returned to basketball, he played with even more intensity than before. The injury had reminded him how much he needed the game, how much he needed to feel in control. The 1986 playoffs arrived, and the Bulls faced the Boston Celtics in the first round. The Celtics were the best team in basketball, led by Larry Bird, one of the greatest players ever. Most people expected Chicago to lose quickly, but Michael had other plans. In Game 2 of the series, Michael scored 63 points, still a playoff record today. He was unstoppable. He made shots from everywhere on the court. He drove to the basket like his life depended on it. After the game, Larry Bird said something that would become famous. "I think it's just God disguised as Michael Jordan." But Michael's incredible performance wasn't about basketball talent alone. It was about all the anger and pain he had been carrying for years. Every shot was him proving that he couldn't be stopped. Every point was him showing that he was stronger than his worst memories. The Bulls still lost the series to Boston, but Michael's performance made everyone notice. He wasn't just a good player, he was something special. Still, losing the series hurt Michael deeply. Losing always reminded him of feeling helpless. Even though he had played amazingly, his team had failed. That summer, Michael trained harder than ever. He lifted weights until his muscles screamed. He ran until he could barely breathe. He shot baskets until his hands were bleeding. "Success isn't enough," he told himself. "I have to be perfect. I have to win everything." Michael didn't realize it yet, but he was using his pain as fuel in a way that would make him the greatest player who ever lived. Every memory of feeling weak made him work harder. Every reminder of being helpless made him more determined to win. The scared 12-year-old who had confronted Uncle Raymond was still inside him. But now that boy's strength was being channeled into something extraordinary. Michael Jordan was becoming a legend, one painful memory at a time. But the journey was far from over. The biggest challenges were still ahead of him, and the deepest. Healing was still to come, because legends aren't just made from talent and hard work. They're made from learning how to transform pain into power. And Michael was still learning that lesson. Michael Jordan was 28 years old and finally standing on top of the basketball world. The Chicago Bulls had just defeated the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Finals, 4-1. Michael held the championship trophy high above his head as confetti fell from the ceiling of Chicago Stadium. He had dreamed of this moment since he was a child shooting baskets in his backyard in Wilmington. But when it finally happened, Michael couldn't stop crying. The tears weren't just from joy. They were from relief. After 7 years in the NBA, after all the disappointments and losses, he had finally proven to himself and the world that he was a champion. "We did it!" his teammate Scottie Pippen shouted over the crowd noise. "We're champions!" Michael nodded, but even in this moment of ultimate triumph, something felt empty inside him. He had reached the top of basketball, but the scared 12-year-old was still there, still carrying those old wounds. Over the next 2 years, Michael and the Bulls won 2 more championships, 1992 and 1993. Michael was named Finals MVP all 3 times. He was the most famous athlete in the world. Everyone knew his name, but fame and success couldn't fill the hole that Uncle Raymond had left in Michael's heart. The more successful he became, the more he felt like he was hiding behind a mask. During interviews, Michael was charming and confident. He smiled and joked with reporters. He made millions of dollars from endorsement deals. His face was on billboards and cereal boxes. But privately, Michael was still struggling with trust and relationships. He had married Juanita Vanoy in 1989, and they had started a family together. But even with his wife, Michael found it hard to talk about his deepest feelings. "Sometimes I feel like I don't really know who I am," Michael told Juanita one night, after winning his third championship. "I feel like I'm always performing, always trying to be what people expect." Juanita knew her husband was carrying some kind of pain, but Michael had never told her about Uncle Raymond. He had never told anyone the whole truth. Then, on July 23, 1993, everything changed. James Jordan Sr., Michael's father, was driving home from a friend's funeral in North Carolina. He stopped to rest at a highway rest area around midnight. Two young men saw his expensive car and decided to rob him. During the robbery, they shot and killed James Jordan. The news reached Michael while he was playing golf in Chicago. When the phone call came, Michael collapsed to his knees on the golf course. His father was gone. The man who had loved him unconditionally. The man who had supported his dreams. The man who had never known the full truth about what Uncle Raymond had done, but who had loved Michael anyway. The funeral was held in Wilmington. The whole Jordan family gathered to say goodbye to the man who had held them all together. That's when Raymond showed up. Michael was standing by his father's casket when he saw a familiar figure walking into the funeral home. Raymond Jordan looked older now, grayer, but Michael recognized him immediately. Michael's stomach twisted into the same knots he had felt as a child. All the success, all the championships, all the fame. None of it mattered in that moment. He felt like that scared 10-year-old again. After the service, as people were leaving, Raymond approached Michael. "I'm sorry for your loss," Raymond said quietly. "Your father was a good man." Michael stared at him. He could feel his hands shaking with anger and old fear. "Thank you," Michael said, his voice tight and controlled. "You've done real good for yourself," Raymond continued. "I always knew you were special. I remember teaching you basketball when you were little." The way Raymond said it made Michael sick, like he was taking credit for Michael's success, like those horrible nights in Michael's bedroom were just innocent basketball lessons. Michael wanted to scream. He wanted to tell everyone what Raymond had really done. But this was his father's funeral. This wasn't the time or place. "Don't you ever come near my family again," Michael whispered, so quietly that only Raymond could hear. Raymond's face changed. He could see the adult strength in Michael's eyes, but he could also see the pain that was still there. "I don't know what you're talking about," Raymond said. "Yes, you do," Michael replied. Then he walked away. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. The combination of losing his father and seeing Raymond again brought back all the memories he had been trying to forget. The fear, the confusion, the feeling of being trapped. For the first time in years, Michael felt completely out of control. 2 months later, in October 1993, Michael shocked the world by announcing his retirement from basketball. "I don't have the drive anymore," he told reporters. "I've accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish in basketball." But that wasn't the real reason. The real reason was that Michael finally understood that basketball hadn't healed him. It had made him successful and famous, but it hadn't fixed the broken parts inside him. His father's death had forced him to face the truth. He had been running from his pain for 20 years, and he was tired of running. Michael decided to try professional baseball, playing for the Birmingham Barons, a minor league team owned by the Bulls organization. Baseball was different from basketball. It was quieter, less intense. It gave him time to think. But thinking wasn't always good for Michael. Without the constant adrenaline of basketball, all the emotions he had been holding back started coming to the surface. One night in Birmingham, after a particularly bad game where Michael struck out 3 times, he called Roslyn from his hotel room. "I don't know who I am without basketball," he told her. His voice sounded lost and scared. "You're my brother," Roslyn said. "You're a survivor. You're someone who took the worst thing that could happen to a kid and used it to become great." "But what if that's all I am?" Michael asked. "What if I'm just damaged goods who got lucky at basketball?" For the first time in their adult lives, Michael and Roslyn had a real conversation about Uncle Raymond, about what had happened, about how it had shaped Michael's entire life. Michael cried that night. Really cried. For the first time since he was 12 years old, he let himself feel all the pain he had been carrying. "I've been so angry," he told Roslyn. "Angry at Raymond. Angry at myself for not stopping it sooner. Angry at the world." "That anger made you great," Roslyn said. "But it doesn't have to control you anymore." "How do I let it go?" Michael asked. "I don't know," Roslyn admitted. "But maybe you don't have to let it go completely. Maybe you just have to stop running from it." That conversation changed something inside Michael. He realized that he had been using basketball to avoid dealing with his trauma. He had been so focused on proving he was strong that he had never allowed himself to heal. For the first time in his life, Michael started thinking about getting help. Real help. From a professional who could help him understand his feelings and work through his pain. But first, he had to decide if he was ready to stop running. If he was ready to face the scared 12-year-old inside him and finally help that boy heal, it would be the hardest thing Michael had ever done. Harder than any basketball game. Harder than any championship. But it was the only way he could ever be truly free. March 18th, 1995. Michael Jordan walked into the United Center in Chicago wearing his familiar number 23 jersey. After nearly 2 years away from basketball, he was ready to come back. But this wasn't the same Michael who had left. He looked the same on the outside, still tall, still athletic, still competitive. But something inside him had changed during his time away. His announcement was simple. "I'm back." Those 2 words sent shockwaves through the sports world. Fans celebrated in the streets of Chicago. Ticket prices skyrocketed. ESPN interrupted regular programming to cover the news. But Michael's Toddy Beats return wasn't really about basketball. It was about something deeper. During his time playing baseball in Birmingham, Michael had started working with a therapist named Dr. Sarah Mitchell. At first, Michael had been skeptical about therapy. "I don't need someone to tell me how to think," he had told Roslyn when she first suggested it. But Dr. Mitchell was different. She was calm and patient. She didn't try to fix Michael or tell him what to do. She just listened. "Tell me about your childhood," she had said during their first session. "My childhood was fine," Michael replied automatically. "I had good parents. We didn't have much money, but we were happy." "What about the parts that weren't fine?" Dr. Mitchell asked gently. That question opened a door that Michael had kept locked for 20 years. Slowly, over many sessions, he began to tell the truth about Uncle Raymond, about the fear, about the confusion, about how those experiences had shaped everything he became. "You used your pain as fuel," Dr. Mitchell had explained. "That's how you survived. But now you're an adult. You don't have to carry that scared little boy's burdens anymore." "But what if that's what made me great?" Michael asked. "What if I lose my edge?" Your greatness doesn't come from your trauma, Dr. Mitchell said. It comes from your strength. The strength you showed when you fought back. The strength you showed when you refused to stay broken. Working with Dr. Mitchell helped Michael understand something important. He had been afraid that healing would make him weak. But the opposite was true. Healing was making him stronger. When Michael returned to basketball in 1995, he played with a different kind of intensity. Still competitive, still determined to win, but not desperate in the same way. He was playing basketball because he loved it, not because he needed it to feel safe. The Bulls didn't win the championship that year. They lost in the playoffs to the Orlando Magic, but Michael wasn't devastated by the loss the way he used to be. "We'll get them next year," he told his teammates in the locker room after the loss. And they did. In 1996, the Bulls won 72 games. During the regular season, the most in NBA history at that time. They went on to win the championship, with Michael leading the way. But the most meaningful moment came during the playoffs, when Michael scored 55 points in a game against the New York Knicks. After the game, he sat in the locker room holding the basketball, tears streaming down his face. "This one's for my father," he said to the reporters, "and for everyone who helped me get here." He was thinking about Dr. Mitchell, about Roslyn, about all the people who had helped him face his truth and start healing. The Bulls won 2 more championships in 1997 and 1998. Michael was named Finals MVP all 3 times. But these championships felt different from the first 3. They came from joy instead of desperation. During the 1998 Finals, something happened that would have broken the old Michael. He came down with flu-like symptoms before Game 5 against the Utah Jazz. He was weak, dehydrated, and could barely stand. 30-year-old Michael would have played through the illness because he was terrified of appearing weak. But this Michael played because his team needed him, and he wanted to help them win. He scored 38 points in that game, leading the Bulls to victory. After the game, Scottie Pippen had to help Michael walk off the court. "That's the greatest performance I have ever seen," Pippen said later. "Not just because of the points, but because of the heart it took." But Michael knew the truth. The real victory wasn't the basketball game. It was that he had learned the difference between being weak and being vulnerable. Being sick didn't make him weak. Asking for help didn't make him weak. What made him strong was his willingness to face his fears and keep going anyway. During the 1998 season, something else significant happened. Raymond Jordan died of a heart attack in North Carolina. Michael learned about it between Games 5 and 6 of the Finals. His first reaction was relief. The man who had hurt him was gone forever. But then he felt something unexpected. Sadness. Not sadness for Raymond, but sadness for the child he had been. Sadness for all the years he had spent running from something that couldn't hurt him anymore. Michael didn't attend Raymond's funeral, but that night he called Dr. Mitchell. "I thought I would feel happy," he told her, "but I just feel empty." "That's normal," Dr. Mitchell said. "Healing isn't about revenge or justice. It's about freeing yourself from the past." "I think I'm finally free," Michael said. After the Bulls won their 6th championship, Michael retired again. This time, it felt like a choice instead of an escape. He had proven everything he needed to prove to himself. But Michael wasn't done with basketball completely. In 2001, at age 38, he made another comeback with the Washington Wizards. This time, he wasn't trying to prove he was strong or escape from pain. He was playing because he still loved the game. He wasn't the same dominant player he had been with the Bulls. His body was older, his reflexes slower. but he played with pure joy for the first time since he was a child. During his time with the Wizards, Michael started working with at-risk youth in Washington, D.C. He would visit community centers and talk to kids who were facing their own struggles. One day, a 12-year-old boy asked him a question that stopped Michael in his tracks. "Mr. Jordan, how did you learn to be so mentally tough?" Michael looked at this young boy and saw himself at that age. Scared, confused, looking for someone to trust. "Sometimes bad things happen to good people," Michael said carefully. "But you don't have to let those things win. You can use them to make yourself stronger." "What if the bad things are really bad?" the boy asked. Michael knelt down so he was eye level with the child. "Then you find people who can help you. You talk about it. You don't carry it alone." "Did bad things happen to you?" the boy asked. Michael paused. For so many years, he had hidden his truth, but maybe it was time to start sharing it in the right way, to help others. "Yes," Michael said simply. "Bad things happened to me when I was your age, but I survived them. And so can you." That conversation planted a seed in Michael's mind. Maybe his story, the whole story, including the painful parts, could help other people. Maybe his truth could set more than just himself free. When Michael retired from basketball for the final time in 2003, he was a different person than the one who had first left in 1993. He was still competitive. He still hated losing. But he was no longer running from his past. He had learned the most important lesson of his life. Healing doesn't make you weak. It makes you whole. And being whole was better than being perfect. Present day. Rosalind Jordan Smith finished telling her story to Jake Martinez from ESPN, but she wasn't done yet. Her hands were still shaking as she set down the old photo of young Michael and Uncle Raymond. "That's why I called you back," she told Jake over the phone. "People need to know the real story, not just the basketball story. The human story." Jake was quiet for a long time. As a reporter, he had heard many difficult stories, but this one was different. This explained so much about Michael Jordan that the world had never understood. "Mrs. Jordan Smith," Jake finally said, "this is an incredible story. But we would need Michael's permission to tell it. We couldn't do this without him agreeing." "I know," Rosalind said. "That's why I'm going to ask him." The next week, Rosalind flew to Charlotte, North Carolina, where Michael lived and owned the Charlotte Hornets basketball team. She hadn't told him she was coming. She just showed up at his office. "Roz," Michael said when his secretary brought her in. He stood up from behind his large desk, surprised but happy to see his sister. "What are you doing here?" Rosalind looked at her brother. He was 61 years old now, his hair completely gray, but he still carried himself like the athlete he had been. More importantly, his eyes looked peaceful in a way they never had when he was younger. "I told a reporter about Uncle Raymond," she said simply. Michael's face changed. He sat back down in his chair slowly. "What did you tell them?" he asked. "Everything. I know," Rosalind said. "About what he did to you. About how it shaped who you became. About how your greatest strength came from your worst pain." Michael was quiet for a long time. He looked out the window of his office at the city of Charlotte. "Below, why now?" he asked finally. "Because there are kids out there going through the same thing," Rosalind said. "And they need to know that they can survive it. They need to know that they can be strong." Michael thought about the 12-year-old boy he had met at the community center years ago, the one who had asked about being mentally tough. He thought about all the children who might be suffering in silence, the way he had. "If I do this, Michael said slowly. Everything changes. People will see me differently. Maybe, Rosalind said, but maybe they'll see you as more human. Maybe they'll understand that your greatness came not from being perfect, but from refusing to stay broken. 3 days later, Michael Jordan agreed to sit down for the most important interview of his life. The ESPN cameras were set up in Michael's home office. Pictures of his family lined the walls. His 6 championship trophies sat on a shelf behind his desk. But today wasn't about basketball accomplishments. Jake Martinez sat across from Michael, knowing he was about to hear one of the most important sports stories ever told. People always ask me where my competitiveness came from, Michael began, his voice steady but emotional. They think it was just natural talent or good coaching, but the truth is, it came from a very dark place. For the next 2 hours, Michael told his story. The real story. About Uncle Raymond and the abuse that began when he was 10 years old. About the fear and confusion that shaped his childhood. About how basketball became his escape, and eventually, his salvation. I was angry for a very long time, Michael admitted, looking directly into the camera. Angry at Raymond for what he did. Angry at myself for not speaking up sooner. Angry at the world for letting it happen. He talked about how his famous competitiveness, the stories of him gambling, of him being ruthless with teammates, of him creating motivation where none existed, all came from his need to never feel powerless again. When people called me arrogant or mean, they weren't completely wrong, Michael said. But they didn't understand why. Every game, every practice, every competition was me proving to myself that I was in control, that I was strong, that no one could hurt me anymore. Michael explained that his retirements from basketball weren't really about losing love for the game. They were about him finally learning to face his trauma instead of running from it. My father's death forced me to stop running, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I realized I had been using basketball to avoid dealing with what happened to me. I had to learn that being vulnerable doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Jake asked Michael about the therapy he had received during his baseball years. Dr. Mitchell saved my life, Michael said simply. She helped me understand that I wasn't defined by what happened to me. She taught me that healing was possible. Michael talked about the difference between his first 3 championships and his last 3. The first 3 came from desperation, he explained. I was trying to prove I wasn't weak. The last 3 came from joy. I was playing because I loved it, not because I needed it to feel safe. When Jake asked about Raymond's death, Michael's answer was thoughtful and measured. I felt relief when he died, Michael said, but I also felt sad for that little boy I used to be. Sad for all the years I spent running from something that couldn't hurt me anymore. Michael's voice became stronger as he talked about his work with young people. I want kids to know that if something like this happens to them, it's not their fault, he said, and it doesn't have to define them. You can still become whatever you want to become. He spoke directly to the camera, as if talking to every child who might be watching. The real championship isn't about winning games, Michael said. It's about not letting the worst thing that happened to you become the only thing that defines you. Jake asked about Rosalind's role in his healing. My sister saved me in ways she doesn't even know, Michael said, looking at Rosalind, who was watching from behind the cameras. She was there during the worst times. She saw me when I was broken, and she loved me anyway. Near the end of the interview, Michael reflected on his entire journey. People call me the greatest basketball player of all time, he said. But that's not what I'm most proud of. I'm most proud of the fact that I survived, that I found a way to turn my pain into something positive. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I became great at basketball not because nothing bad ever happened to me, but because I refused to let the bad things win. That's the real story. That's the truth I want people to know. As the interview concluded, Michael made one final statement. To any child who is going through something like this right now, you are not alone. You are not broken. You are stronger than you know. And there are people who will help you if you let them. When the cameras stopped rolling, Michael sat quietly for a moment. Then he looked at Roslyn. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Free," Michael said simply. "For the first time in my life, I feel completely free." The interview aired 3 months later as a special ESPN documentary. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of people shared their own stories of surviving childhood trauma. Support groups were formed. Hotlines received increased calls from children asking for help. Michael established a foundation to help children who had experienced abuse. He spoke at conferences about healing and resilience. He used his platform to shine light on a problem that too many people had suffered with in silence. The final scene of the documentary showed Michael and Roslyn visiting a youth center in Chicago, where Michael was talking to a group of young people. "We can't change what happened to us," Roslyn said, watching her brother speak to kids who looked just like he had at their age. "But we can make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." Michael looked at these children and saw himself, not the champion, not the legend, but the scared boy who just needed someone to believe in him and protect him. The real victory, Michael told them, isn't about perfect success. It's about perfect healing. It's about becoming whole. As the documentary ended, the final words on screen were simple but powerful. If you or someone you know needs help, you are not alone. Call the National Child Abuse Hotline, 01800-4A-CHILD. Michael Jordan's greatest assist wasn't on a basketball court. It was helping other people find the strength to save themselves, just like he had learned to do, one painful step at a time. We hope this story touched your heart and showed you that even our greatest heroes have faced darkness, but they found the strength to turn their pain into power. Where are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let us know what part of the world you're in. We love hearing from our amazing listeners everywhere. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It really helps us reach more people who need to hear stories of hope and healing. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for much more inspiring and eye-opening stories like this one. We share untold truths about famous people, hidden histories, and powerful lessons about overcoming life's greatest challenges. Most importantly, please share this video with your friends and family. Stories like Michael's can help someone who might be struggling right now. Your share could be exactly what someone needs to hear to find their own strength. Together, we can spread kindness, awareness, and hope, one story at a time. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next video.